As we always say when guests come into the green room early, they're on the Tom Coughlin scale. Tom Coughlin of the New York Giants, if you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, the door is locked and you can't come into the meeting. We don't go that far. But, we got professors. Professors are punctual. And Brett Myers is no different. For this, we get to check in with him at Villanova and find out about analytics. Professor, good morning. Thanks for dropping by the morning show.
Well, thank you for having me on. This is a pleasure.
Okay, so I want to get into your analytics here in a second, but my first question is, how much of a soccer person are you going into all of this study that you've had over the last handful of years?
To the max.
Okay.
Eat, breathe, live, play.
Okay.
Yeah, big part of my identity.
All right. So then who is your team? Who are your team's parentheses? Where does your allegiance lie when it comes to watching matches?
Wow. Well, I'd like to have some teams in different countries. So in Spain, Real Madrid.
Okay.
That goes back to having a roommate from Madrid and having a chance to go to Madrid and see games at the Bernabeu. It was a great time to fall in love with that club, with the Galacticos, and the likes of Zidane and Ronaldo and Beckham, Figo, to name a few. And certainly there's a culture here to latch on to a Premier League team. So I had a chance to go to Manchester and got to know some City staffers over there. And so became a Manchester City fan. Had a chance to go to Germany when I was playing in high school and stayed with the host family. They're big Dortmund fans. So, my fandom always begins with a connection. So there you go. There you have it. Real Madrid, Manchester City, Borussia Dortmund.
Okay. So with that fandom that exists, then you decide to go into analytics, and you got to spend some time with the Union and with Toronto FC. When you go knocking on their door, hey, I've got something that I'm a soccer fan, I'm a soccer nerd, and I've got something that you need to look at when it comes to analytics. How did those conversations go when you're knocking on the door of MLSE and sitting there and going, hey, I've got something for you? Or when you're, knocking on Ernst Tanner's door or whomever at Philadelphia and you're going, hey, I got something you need to look at. What were those first conversations like?
Well, I was fortunate. It's that old adage, it's who you know, not necessarily what you know.
Yeah.
And I had relationships from a player that still held true when I was kind of venturing into the space. So fortunately, I knew individuals in the Major League Soccer league office. They brought me in. They knew I was doing research in this domain. And I gave a presentation to the likes of Tim Bezpachenko, Nelson Rodriguez, to name a few. And they felt like it was a good idea for me to present to the MLS Combine. This is going back to 2013. It just so happens the Philadelphia Union coach at the time, John Hackworth, he was an assistant coach at Wake Forest and recruited me as a player. Oh. And so we made that connection very, very soon after my presentation. And then about a month later, we had coffee. He asked me if I could join the staff. So that kind of kickstarted a consulting career. And you also mentioned Toronto FC. That's where Tim Bezpachenko comes in after a year with the Union. He brought me over there, and I was still balancing that with a professor lifestyle here in the Philadelphia area at Villanova. But had a chance to be part of that project at Toronto, which materialized in a supporter shield in 2017, an MLS Cup in 2017, and then I guess I hitched to the Tim Bezpachenko bandwagon. Went with him to Columbus and 2 MLS Cups there. So that kind of was a nice 11-year run helping MLS teams.
Did you get rings? Did you get rings as a part of that?
I did, yes. I'm happy to say, I'm in possession of 3 MLS rings. I feel guilty. There've been people in the sport who've been in it longer than I have probably worked much harder, been fully immersed in the scene in their clubs, and here I am, able to get 3 rings in 11 years. So I'm very thankful, very fortunate.
All right. So what exactly, when you're talking to Tim and you're talking to Hackworth and you're talking to these folks, when you go in the door, you make the presentation, what is the presentation? Take me through the presentation that won these folks over, that got you these 3 rings.
it's the value of analytics. It's the value of information and how it's going to help you win. I mean, you have to speak in those terms, especially in a high competitive environment. And it's without those things, you're behind, and you want every advantage that you can to win. And so at the time when the early presentation I was making, this was very foreign to a lot of the coaches and front office people. But of course, since then, it's only grown. And, now where, clubs were fortunate to have a few individuals like myself working for them, there's departments around the league. So it's come a long way in that time.
What are you, for those of us that aren't the mathematicians here in this conversation, what are you analyzing? What are you breaking down? What are you, when it comes to your analytics, what are you uncovering when you're pulling the tarp off and you're looking at math? What are you explaining to these folks about analytics, how it should work on the field, how it should work off the field? What are you breaking down here? Give me your presentation.
There are different areas you can look at. You can look at your personnel, evaluating players, how they perform throughout a season, looking at your team performance, benchmarking relative to the rest of the league. You can apply it to your scouting, so when you're recruiting new players and potential for acquisition in the club, and then also in the sports science domain. So maximizing players' readiness to perform, keeping them healthy. So those are key areas. We talk about the formulas for a successful operation. You want to be doing well in those areas, and data is going to be a big part of the conversation. So I help come up with what I call KPIs, key performance indicators, that we feel like are going to be necessary for the club to accomplish big goals. And and we feel like if we can hit on an extra player or two that other teams aren't able to do, that's going to give us an edge when we're building teams.
How many different tabs do you have when you're looking at your KPI? I'm treating it like RBI. So it's not like KPIs. It's like KPI to me. It's like an RBI. Runs batted in. How many different keys do you have when it comes to your indicators? I would imagine that you don't have like 27 that you might throw into an equation. You might have 5 or 6. Am I wrong? Or you throw?
Well, I mean, to your point, I mean, there could be too many and there could be too few. You got to find that right balance. And I might have my idea of what it takes to win, but I think this is going to be best when it's a collaborative effort, when a coach can be part of that conversation, where a GM can be part of that conversation, so that within the club, it's a universal language that people are speaking. I mean, I felt like for me, I got almost more fulfillment. I mean, the rings are obviously huge, but when I come into the training ground and I hear metrics being discussed in kind of everyday language, that for someone in an analytics world is a huge win. So that's what you want. That's, you want the club vested in what's happening, and you want them to understand it and to understand how it's going to make the club win.
So do the KPI differ from team to team, or is there a kind of a universality that's attached to it where the categories, they'll be the same ones? Or is it when you go into a different environment, they want to focus on different categories where your KPI are concerned?
It's a really good question, because I do split it between what I call production KPIs and stylistic KPIs. So the production KPIs, in my opinion, are things that need to happen regardless of how the team's going to play. I mean, one metric that you may have heard of that's gained traction over the years is expected goals.
Yeah.
And so it's just a fact that if you have high expected goals, if you have low expected goals against, you're going to have a tremendous chance to win. It doesn't matter if you're a possession-oriented team or a counter-attacking team. That's just what the production of your attacking game, the strength of your defensive game to keep the other team from producing. But depending on the coach, there might be certain things that they want to see in their team that is the identity of that team. It's how it's one thing to do things to win, but then there's sort of a roadmap on how you're going to win. And so, I've had a mixture of philosophies and coaches that I've been a part of, and some have more more clear stylistic identities. I think Wilfred Nancy's a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
He was very, very enthusiastic about establishing KPIs, and he loved not only that, but he loved the data visualization that could come with it, and he liked colorful charts that and looking at the field of play, and so when you have that kind of excitement, enthusiasm from such an important part of what's happening and a leader in the organization, that's going to go a long way. And I'm fortunate for someone like Tim Bezpachenko, who's been data driven throughout his MLS career and seen value in the kind of work that I do.
Okay. You've given me now 2 questions.
Yeah.
How do you convert the non-believer?
Yeah, good question. And I think that was more of an uphill battle earlier on because, I think there's when you're not sure, and I'm kind of looking at this from the standpoint of the cynic, is that here's this emerging space, and here are all of a sudden people that are coming into the organization that don't fit the typical mold. Maybe they don't have the highest degree of playing experience, the highest degree of coaching experience, but they sort of bring in this foreign concept, and it gets tense, and so it does. It does. I mean, it could be, intense conversations around that. But I think that, what I learned is that you have to respect anyone's perspective. And I think that if you close off to anything, if you close yourself off to analytics, if you close yourself off from maybe more of the traditional ways of viewing the game, I think you're at some point losing opportunity, because I've always felt like it's the collaboration, it's the harmony, it's a little yin yang. And when a key decision maker, like a coach, like a GM, has all the important sources of information and recognizes where they can complement each other, it's going to lead to better decisions at the end. So it's something that I've learned over the years. I think when I came in, to be honest, I felt like it was sort of like, my way was a superior way. And, a lot of people don't understand the inefficiencies that exist. And, you want to kind of bulldoze in your thoughts. But, when you're working in an organizational concept, you can't think like that. And so, and I think for the kind of the earlier operations, especially in Toronto, I mean, we did progress each year, but I think it was, there was a lot of, I think, organizational dynamics that had to come together in the right way for us to move forward and have the success that we had.
Has your approach differed? Has your math differed? Has the equations and your baseline differed as you developed over time, or has it pretty much been a static numerical analytical approach that has worked over time?
It's been dynamic. I think when I first started studying the game, and I was looking at Premier League data, for example, and I was looking at the success that Manchester City was having kind of in their makeover in the Pep Guardiola or early Pep Guardiola days, and a lot of short passing, high possession, it made me think that was the way to play. And so, in the earlier days, I was thinking like, this correlation between different passing metrics and success, and the game changes, and so, as soon as there's teams that play that certain way, there's going to be maybe a Liverpool that is thriving a bit more on the transition, or maybe a French team in 2018 that's playing a bit of a deeper line and encountering a little more, and it just made me realize that part of the beauty of soccer is that there's so many ways that one can win, and that as players evolve and coaching methods change, it can just invite kind of new looks to the game. And I think we've seen that in the last what successful teams look like nowadays looks different than 10 years ago, than 20 years ago. So and I think with that, some of the insights get generated from analytics can change as well, and from an analytics perspective, more data keeps being generated, so there's more opportunities that open up there. In the earlier days, I'm focusing on these sort of these new events that are all of a sudden being captured, 2,000 playing events that are happening in the game, whereas now there's shifting towards the tracking, all the player movements and the off the ball activity that's going on in a game.
So when you're looking at things analytically and you have, let's just say, two coaches, yes, hydration is good. We approve of hydration here. So if you have two coaches, and you've mentioned two, so I'll just use these two. So you've mentioned Pep Guardiola and you've mentioned Wilfred Nancy. Their approaches are different when it comes to on the field play, and especially Pep year to year, he can adjust. We've seen what he's done with John Stones and having him come forward as a center back as a part of his activity offensively. Wilfred Nancy's the same to a degree, where he'll have, a Sean Zawadzki. He'll come up the left-hand side and he'll bomb forward. How do you account for, in analytics, stylistic differences within coaching when it comes to applying it to your math and trying to develop levels of success and tent poles that you need to come through when it comes to coaches? I mean, because look, I would imagine that if you're trying to come up with analytics for somebody like Sam Allardyce or Sean Dyche, it would be far different than trying to come up with it for Pep or Wilfred Nancy. How do you kind of baseline differences stylistically to make sure the analytics work?
There has to be, that's where, when I was talking about the stylistic versus production KPIs, there has to be a link between those two. So if it is going to involve, a center back pushing forward and kind of the risking of more numbers in the attacking third and just more possibilities to generate expected goals from an attacking standpoint, then what kind of protections do we have if that doesn't work? Are we willing to accept that risk? And do we have players? I think if you're going to play like that, then you have to have players that are able to transition back, or there needs to be a fluidity and flexibility in your team to transition back. Because I think there's a bit of at times there can be trade-offs that you're willing to play a certain way and give up something in the game. So you can't necessarily expect to be excellent at everything, but you need to have some contingency plans in there for those types of things. So it's I think that there's plenty of games where we look at post-match reports, and coaches could be happy because maybe they've hit on their stylistic KPIs, but then they're not hitting on the production, and that can happen one game. But if it's happening over a series of games, and there's a problem, and maybe the problem that isn't necessarily a coaching problem, but maybe there's a problem that we're missing an aspect of the game that needs to be in there. Maybe we need to have something about transition defending that, it seems like we're getting forward, doing well, we're not scoring. Maybe that's part of the problem, but then we're giving up a lot of transition attacks and then conceding a high degree of expected goals per shot. So one of the things I've learned is that maybe depending on how things go in the season, there may need to be adjustments on these post-match reports or how we're looking at things. If it appears that it's we're getting a bit off track with it, not a fundamental overhaul, but flexibility to adjust, because things are going to happen over the course of the season. They're going to be injuries. Maybe there's change in tactics. Maybe there's a change in formation. And I think if the coach front office is going to be flexible, the analytics team, I think, has to be flexible as well.
Visiting with Villanova professor Bret Myers, getting into analytics. I am going to get into the U.S. men's national team and what you think about the World Cup, but you keep opening doors for me, and I keep wanting to knock on. How do you account for, you mentioned injuries. How do you account for human error on the field of play as a part of your analytics? Say somebody misses a sitter, say somebody, and I know that XG accounts for that with like massive numbers and things like that. Somebody has a yellow card offense, somebody has a red card offense that turns into 11v10. How do you account for all of these human error wild cards in your analytics?
We look at it as randomness, it's variability, and that's natural with a lot of processes, human processes being one of them. But I think you have to kind of distinguish what you can control and what you can't control as much. And I think the idea,
Christian Romero, that man. I mean,
but So I think that's where, if you think about expected goals, I think the idea there is that you have more control on the quality of chance that you're generating, as opposed to sometimes you don't have control on how that chance is being executed and converted, because part of it depends on the shooter, his or her ability to finish that particular opportunity, and the quality of the goalkeeping that you're going against. And so, and I think that's where the metrics are very helpful, because I think if you set them up in the right way, then that almost like creates the narrative for how things are going in a match. Hey, we did everything well. We advanced the ball the way we needed to. We were able to unlock the defense to create scoring opportunities. We didn't execute at the end, and it was a bit unlucky. I mean, that's where the randomness comes in. Or, it's a mistake in the back, a critical error when in a game where we're having trouble finishing. It was an uncharacteristic slip that led to a pass that, and the thing that's true about the analytics when it comes to soccer, is true in a lot of sports, is that, and there's a quote that goals change games, and it's very true. I mean, game state. And that's going to my research and going back to kind of early studies I did with substitutions. I mean, it was all about the game state. It was all about whether you're tied, behind, ahead, in terms of what the best thing that you're going to do and how you're going to play tactically. So yeah, I mean, it's the going back to your original question. You have to accept. I think the point is you have to accept that mistakes are going to happen, that human error is going to come in. And then just try to really hone in on what you can control.
How big or how in-depth were your reports when you started?
I'll say that when I started, they were big and they weren't efficient, because I just wanted to make a good impression, and I was willing to work hours. And I think I had more of the stamina than I have now to put that time in. And that's also trying to balance a family life on the home front.
That's not allowed, sir.
But what, at least over the years, and I saw it in the skill sets that other analysts had, is you got to get good at coding, and you got to get good at coding so that you can be efficient with your reports. Because if a coach is always asking for certain metrics on teams from the last 3 matches, then you need to have code that can run that very quickly. Soccer, typically, if a match is played on a Saturday night, there's an expectation that you're going to have the next pregame report maybe done by Monday, so that going into the start of training for that week, it's already set. So you've got to have some ability to, Sunday, early parts of Monday, have that report finish for the coach. So nowadays, AI can help with the coding, so that eases some of the burden, and it's going to unlock even for the analyst more ability to turn over information, valuable information, more quickly.
So when it comes to the U.S. men's national team, do you have a chapter basically that starts when Mauricio Pochettino came in and was named manager, and he starts with his first match forward? Is that how you kind of delineate things, or do you go past that to blend in info with Pochettino? How do you break that up?
Well, I think first, I mean, there's this when you look at national teams, there's a recognition that I think the way that you look at the analytics and look at what explains success in a competition like the World Cup, that's going to be different than, I think, looking at the success over a 34, 38, match season when it comes to the leagues. And, the recognition that when you're in a, incredibly high stakes tournament with relatively few number of games, the game state, the in-game management is going to be much more important. And so, and the other thing is that coaches do make a difference, for sure. I mean, I think we anecdotally see that, and we track the successful coaches and the kind of impact that they can make on teams. But I've always been very sympathetic to the job that these national team managers have, because they get their teams in these short spurts of time, during these international windows. and then they're spending their time to sort of evaluating players. They don't get to have the team together the way a club comes together for their seasons. I mean, they start in a preseason period, and it's a continual flow, kind of building the concepts. But trying to build these concepts in a team while the personnel is constantly changing, and then you've got to put your best squad, your best foot forward when that last roster comes. It's a daunting challenge, and then the added pressure to be a host country. With that said, I mean, I think this is our team has kind of hit this plateau, I would say, over the years where we're consistently making it to the second round. We have a 2002 where we break into the quarterfinals, but we just can't. And if you track the rankings, we kind of stay in this ranked 9 to 15, 16 kind of area. And I think the key question is what gets us into that top 8, what gets us eventually into the top 4. And so the analytics, when you look at, the strength of national teams, it's going to be about, how many individuals do you have playing at the highest levels, doing big things at the highest levels. I mean, I think when you look at the kinds of countries that are winning, that's what it needs. So when you have a Weston McKennie who's doing big things with Juventus, that's going to be huge for the national team. That's not to say that MLS doesn't hold value in that, because I think that ultimately soccer is a sport where it's critical that you have the depth, that you have the quality, not just at the top, but throughout the roster. So can't expect that that necessarily the entire team is just going abroad and playing there, but we have to have the league continue to improve, and I think MLS has shown over its history that it's the same thing with the economic model. I think the talent has been kind of the slow growth process. The competition has been a slow growth process, and it's still growing, and still the growing pains come along with it. But when we get MLS to be in that higher echelon of leagues where it's creeping up to be there, and then we marry that with maybe a balance of players that are playing in top 5 leagues in Europe, that's going to get us over the hump. But look, I mean, we're looking at the World Cup this summer, and I know we want to talk about that. And anytime you're a host country, that's going to probably give you an extra round or two over expectation. I mean, that's what history has shown with that too. So that where I see our upside realistically being a semifinal type team, kind of getting that boost that maybe gets us over that hump of a round of 16 quarterfinal.
Have you volunteered your information to national teams in the past, whether it's the U.S. this time around, or have you sat there and it's like, hey, World Cup, hey, here, Canada, hey, here's some information have you volunteered to national teams before?
I've never kind of provided that service to national teams. I mean, I've only been a few degrees of separation just in the work I've done with MLS teams, but I know what I've been happy about is I've seen U.S. soccer over the years, both with the men and the women, invest in analytics resources, and so I know that they have that at their fingertips. Of course, it comes down to the right kind of setups, the right kind of communication to be able to successfully implement. But from what I've seen, they've done a pretty good job of recognizing its place and trying to invest accordingly.
So the gap that we have with Major League Soccer / talent pool and worldwide, I dug up while you were talking about it. The most recent numbers, Global Football Rankings has MLS at number 10. And in order, Premier League, Serie A, La Liga, Bundesliga, Ligue 1, Belgium, the EFL Championship, which I think is rated far too high at number 7, Liga Portugal, Serie A in Brazil, and then Major League Soccer at number 10. Mm-hmm. So for you, if I'm understanding your analytics correctly, the Major League Soccer player who is, and like I said, taking the GFR for what it is, Major League Soccer is at number 10. So if you have players in your national team that are in the number 10 league in the country, but you need to have them playing, like you said, with Weston McKennie, who's on a heater right now. So the more players that you have in those other 9 leagues help, in theory, boost everything for your national team perspective through the analytics that the numbers that you're crunching. Am I on the right path?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's finding that balance for sure. Cause I think when you talk about Brazil, cause you mentioned, I think the Brazilian league being maybe ninth on that list. And
yes.
I mean, there's a very high talent level. And that sort of gets into, I think the cultural upbringings and the touches that in a very organic, pure type way that players are getting when they're younger, and the tradition around the game. And that's one of the things about our development that's an uphill battle, which is we have very structured environments that the players train. So there's going to be those differences, but I think it does hold sometimes like the likes of Brazil and Argentina back, because a lot of those players are going to Europe, then they're having to come back and settle in with their national team. And, is their entire team going to be Europe based, or are they going to build it through domestic? But what I've seen though, I think having a strong domestic league is a factor. I think it helps a Spain and England, a Germany, having a strong domestic league and be able to staff their team, because everything's close. They don't have to travel too far, to go to their clubs to play in their national teams. So, I think, and I'm sure this has been, and I haven't been part of the high level conversations with MLS to figure it out, but what I've deduced is that MLS, first just try to be the best league in the Western Hemisphere, and they've been climbing up. Can they be better? Can they be clearly ahead of Liga MX and ahead of the South American leagues? And then, what kinds of, just like there've been the kind of crossover competitions in the CONCACAF Champions League, within the Western Hemisphere, what kinds of crossover opportunities can eventually exist to start to get some matches against the top leagues, so that it's and look, with the calendar changing, that is more of a possibility than it's ever been before. So those are the kind of the mechanisms where I think the league, and as more money, of course, money is going to be part of the equation, and as the constraints that MLS has had to impose to have slow economic growth, as those get relaxed over the years and the payrolls increased, and it's not just the top end, but the middle and the bottom parts of the roster, then you'll start to see really a jump in being part of that, closer to that top five conversation.
Do you account for economics as a part of your KPI when it comes to not having salary caps, money invested in players, having all the top players with a whole lot of money being paid? Is economics a part of your analytics?
Yes. Yeah. I think and I know, because I've done some studies looking at the Premier League, and I'm under the impression that there are kind of rules about how much money you need to spend to increase your chances of survival in the Premier League, how much money you need to spend to assert yourself in the championship. Money buys talent, and oftentimes it's the eyes can tell you what a good player is. That doesn't mean that you don't need data, because I think that's important. Obviously, it's enormous, and this is where you've seen Brentford and Bournemouth and Brighton. These clubs that I think have robust scouting operations that now are becoming much more efficient, because if you're mining the data and you find certain players, you can be much more proactive and deliberate about who you're scouting. And that was a big part of how Leicester City built that. I mean, it's crazy, that 10 years ago they're winning a championship, and now that in the Premier League, now they are where they are. But and that's what and you have to have a sustainable operation. It's tough. I mean we can get on that whole topic of championship and Premier League.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. But it's but there is money's a big part of this. Whether you're looking at how much you need to spend to get quality, or you have a fixed budget, which most teams do, and we're subject to some kind of profit sustainability rules, and you got to do the best with your money. Now you got to be smart, but there has to be some level of investment. I know that's where the pressure's been on MLS to invest more in the players, and when you do it right, you have exciting things happen, as we kind of saw with with Inter Miami and how that team kind of came together.
Yeah,
But it's like but we also know from history that you can't just spend and spend. I mean, we've seen teams, we've seen Man United post Sir Alex Ferguson, spend money and not quite get it right for many seasons, and maybe it's finally starting to come together for them. And that's where, kind of coming back to what we talked about earlier, I think spending smart money, having the right setups in your organization, the right player development processes through academies, and then how you're managing your first team is going to be very important.
Do I need to give you a note to give to your professor to make sure you don't get a late slip or anything?
Yeah, my department chair, he's wondering what am I doing today? Going and talking soccer.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I could use that.
I just wanted to make sure that your department chair needed a note or something. Is there a way for folks to look at work that you have published that is okay for the public domain?
Yeah, I mean, I've published some papers over the years. So, I mean, the first paper that I published was an article in substitutions. If you Google like Bret Myers substitutions, you can see that work. I've also have done research in looking at attacking third pass behavior in the Premier League and how that kind of relates to success in managing leads and games. Just recently published a paper, it won't come out until May, on a new goalkeeping metric for the Premier League that I partnered with a student. So that's where my my research can be found out there, and I'm available through LinkedIn and some other channels too.
Okay. Yeah. Can we bookmark the conversation here so you don't get in trouble with your department chair? Because when we get to the end of the English season, we'll have promotion relegation. We'll know who's coming down. We'll know who's going up. The championship has a lot of issues with teams that have been in the Premier League in the past who have spent entirely too much money, and they don't have the results to show for it, and you're getting a lot of PSR. Leicester City's now a part of that too. Can we bookmark it here and come back at the end of the Premier League season and the season in England to look at them and find out what you see with them, how they're completely and totally just spending entirely too much money and not getting any kind of ROI on anything?
We could do that. My semester's over at that point, so I'll get less heat from the department chair. May not need a late slip for that.
Good. Just give him a link to the show and say, hey, it's here. It's archived. This is what I was talking about. Bret, it was great to catch up with you. I'm glad that we were able to do this. And
likewise, I enjoyed it.
Thank you for the education. And I know that you'll be watching everything from Real Madrid, Manchester City, and everything MLS. Where are the rings, by the way? Where?
They're back here. I don't know if you can see them, but for the listener, they're. So this is. I'll just show you one of them.
Oh, they're in a box. Okay.
Yeah. Here's the crew, the latest crew ring. Yeah, and they do put your name on it. So there's a little Myers is there.
Very nice. Okay, so it was personalized. Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
Make sure no one that's like we saw it, we know it exists, but we're not going to tell anybody where it is. It's great to catch up with you, and thanks for the education today. We're going to come back and revisit a bunch of stuff as we go down the line. Thanks for dropping by on a Tuesday. We really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. Have a good day. Yeah, take care.
There goes Bret Myers from Villanova. And like I said, if his department chair needs a note, I'll be more than happy to shoot a note to his department chair that he spent 35 minutes talking about analytics and the US men's team and leagues and all these kinds of things. So that was very, very cool.